area. Press Control. Now in Streamlabs desktop window. End stream button group.
I think we're back at it, guys. I was not as quite prepared as I thought I was, but we are here for SpellTank. I hope you guys are excited because I'm super excited for this. I've been waiting for it for a while. I didn't know if I should do Drake or not, but I think this is a good move. But I know that Drake is a lot of fun too, so we'll get to her. We'll get to her, guys. I promise. I know I promised some people on Royal Road that I'd get her episodes played out and then start writing her again because people really enjoyed her. Very, very fast paced. And I was releasing chapters for her every day, like I'm doing for Death Wish currently. So it was a bit of content. Did it for 30 days straight. It was amazing.
Google Chrome. Finder, Stat Sheet Chapter 1, A Lost Pages, Untitled 3. Now in Opening Chapter 1, A Lost Life Pages. Actions available. Phone is launched in the background.
Indianapolis, +1 4 6 3 2 7 6 4
FaceTime _notification group. To open the notifications menu, press Control. Footer, body, page 4 of 4. Edit text, content selected body Lester blinked. Body, page 1 of 4. Edit. Do you want to keep this new document untitled 3 inches? You can choose to save your change. Vertical split formatter, group, vertical document. In page 1, summary, chapter 1, A Lost Life, Alexander Cerberus Elysium. Now in chapter 1, A Lost Life. You can choose to save your untitled tags. Tag, where, death will show more, delete, cancel, button, beginning, new line, new M10, manipulated copy. Selection replaced momentum. Save as tag back, change death will show icon new fold cancel save button closing dialog body page 1 of 4 edit text close. Now in chapter 1 A Lost Life page body page 1 of 3 speech muted.
Welcome to SpellTank.
Chapter 1.
Yep.
A Lost Life. Alexander Cerberus Elysium. If the name sounded fake, it was because it indeed was nothing more than a stage name that sounded no more ridiculous than Alexander's actual name, Alexander Caspian Echo. The name carried weight, not in reality as many wished for their own names to toll the bell of history when making a stamp on the past, but within the gaming world, Alexander was one of the most notorious players to ever play the world's largest MMO, or massively multiplayer online game known as Endless Isekai. He shot upright, flinging dirty clothes he'd been using as a blanket all over the surrounding area of his disorderly apartment. He looked over to his wall to see he'd left his flat screen on, the entire wall flashing with images from his ex-girlfriend's live stream. He sighed, watching the beautiful blonde destroying an army of monsters. A skeletal horde of outrageous proportions could be seen all around her, and Alexander's eyes flicked about wildly as he took in the sight. What is she doing? Fuck, she may actually die. Even more outrageous than the army of skeletons was the thought of his ex dying on the game that they were famous for being seemingly invincible within. A game that he hadn't played in an entire year. The very same game he'd vowed to never play again. He picked up his phone and began to type a message, keeping his eyes on the skills his ex was currently using to fight off the horde, murmuring each and every word as he typed. Reverse your take more damage than you are recovering. His phone made a sound like a soft thunderclap as his message sent, and Alexander saw his username pop up on screen amongst hundreds of thousands of others. While the countless of other comments disappeared, his stayed at the top of the conversation to Alexander's surprise. Guess she left me on her priority list. Doubt she's going to listen to... Brittany rolled her eyes, her heterochromatic eyes glistening. The smile she sported still enough to make his heart skip a beat. The blonde's avatar was actually what she looked like in real life, unlike many other famous streamers. Brittany's red and gold eyes matched the accents of her all-black armor. The in-game paladin class she'd created was truly unique, as she was no mere holy knight, but instead was a self-created class known as a holy mechanist. His ex was nothing less than a genius, which the world abroad knew by how she'd stayed ahead of the leveling curve in the most expansive game ever made. Alexander's eyes flicked to her health bar and watched the numbers begin to reverse from their descent and slowly tick back up to their apex. "Thanks, Booligan. What would I ever do without you?" His heart thrummed at the words, knowing she spoke only to him in that moment. He turned away from the screen, looking into the shattered mirror he'd punched into bits just the night before, taking in the sight of his steel-grey eyes, his long, black, curly hair swishing just below his shoulders, the ceiling fan causing a chill to spread goosebumps down his back and chest. He stood, nearly knocking a half-eaten cup noodles off his disorganized coffee table, picking up a discarded V-neck T-shirt, and putting it on before he dusted chip crumbs off his sweatpants. "Better get going or I'm going to be late," said Alexander, checking the time on his smartwatch, pocketing his phone as he scrambled to find his gym bag. Another thunderclap popped up on his phone. He lifted his phone out of his pocket slightly, oddly hoping that Brittany had once more texted him, glancing at it, only to ignore the notification informing him that he had a mere 12 hours until his in-game avatar would be deleted. He rolled his eyes, letting his phone drop back into his pocket. Good riddance. He took a deep breath, noticing his bag by the front door of his studio apartment. He hurdled his couch easily, his 7'1" stature making the feet nothing more than a high knee and a small hop to achieve. He strolled across the messy room, frowning at the sight of his once pristine apartment's chaotic state, before picking up his bag and opening his front door. Stopping in the doorway, he glanced back at his smiling ex, shaking his head as the girl pushed onward, pressing deeper and deeper into the horde of skeletons. "Good luck, beautiful." Alistair Savage paced in her office, feeling on the verge of vomiting. Her #1 client had just been on the verge of dying in a bloody video game, and for the first time in years, Alistair nearly shit herself at the sight. Early in her career as Brittany Malice's agent, something like this would have been seen as nothing to Alistair, now that the young woman known as Malice Incarnate had built a career on being seen as one of the world's few immortal beauties, however. This was already a headline on many of the most renowned news outlets across the globe, for more reasons than just her potential death. "Why now, you idiot boy?" Alistair's door slammed open, and her gaze shot up to see her boss stride into the room and flop down onto the couch held within her modest office. The beautiful woman, dressed in lavish gowns...
Hold on, I forgot I gotta make it so
Speech
you guys
unmuted.
can
Finder.
comment.
Streamlabs, Google Chrome, Pocket Studio, now in 9 NCT, South B, Emily J. Now in 9, AudioBookAnime, Death Wish Ep number 5, a Pocket FM group. You are currently on a group. To interact with items in this group, 9, blindfolded proof. Chrome has new, close, but new tab, back, 4, reload, view site, YouTube, install YouTube, bookmark, default, extension, finish up, guide, so visited, skip navigation, update pro, link, community, visited, link, manage videos, live, selected, playlists, posts, search, latest, selected, popular, oldest, level 2, link, AudioBookAnime, SpellTank Ep1 group, complimentary, YouTube video.
Alright, sorry. Commenters can now comment. I'm sorry, guys. I forget about some things sometimes, but we are here now.
Pages. Chapter 1, A Lost Life, pages.
And let us...
Rather than Alistair's own business professional standard,
Speechify
wearing
has
her
new
hair long
window.
and curly,
Speech
unlike
muted.
Alistair's everyday bun. "What are you going to do about this, darling?" said Miss Coyne, fanning herself with a paper fan made out of what Alistair believed to be actual sewn Benjamin Franklin's. Alistair's door slammed. Early in her career as Brittany Malice's agent, something like this would have been seen as nothing to Alistair, now that the young woman known as Malice Incarnate had built a career on being seen as one of the world's few immortal beauties, however. This was already a headline on many of the most renowned news outlets across the globe, for more reasons than just her potential death. "Why now, you idiot boy?" Alistair's door slammed open, and her gaze shot up to see her boss stride into the room and flop down onto the couch held within her modest office. The beautiful woman, dressed in lavish gowns, rather than Alistair's own business professional standard, wearing her hair long and curly, unlike Alistair's everyday bun. "What are you going to do about this, darling?" said Miss Coyne, fanning herself with a paper fan made out of what Alistair believed to be actual sewn Benjamin Franklin's. The bluebills somehow lined with golden frames that clattered like wind chimes as her wrist moved slowly up and down. "Barbara, I have no fucking idea. I have handled many things for these bloody teenagers, only to get more activity in one day over a single damn text message than I've seen in almost a year. The pair stayed silent as both thought vigorously about what to do. Their network had expectations for continual growth of their audiences across all platforms, both inside and outside the world's largest virtual reality video game. And Alistair knew what her boss was going to say even before the woman opened her mouth.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Is he going to come back? You know what the fans want to see. Alistair sighed. We've talked about this, Barbara. He doesn't want to play anymore. Too many things have sullied what the game once was for him. You know that? Yes. And I've been wrong before, and I'll be wrong again. And you saw what that damn text did. Yes. Our audience numbers jumped from 1.5 billion to almost 3 in 30 minutes. It would have been impossible to miss with how IT panicked. No, not that silly girl. Did you see Brittany? She was smiling, Alistair, genuinely smiling. The sound of the handheld fan stopped as both women looked at each other. You want me to talk to him, don't you? Miss Coyne nodded, her wrist once again dancing near to her lightly decorated features. Her makeup slight, only accentuating her immortal beauty. We would be idiots not to pursue the boy. I know we didn't lose like we thought we would when he quit, as many thought he was holding Brittany back. But I think we both know the truths by what we saw today. She would have had to flee if he hadn't said something when he did. Alistair sucked her teeth in irritation, knowing the statement to be true. I wouldn't even know where to find him. Didn't he sell everything and move into the slums? Diamond City isn't that big, darling. He is probably at a gym. You know how addictive physical exercise becomes after entering Endless, especially at his level of play, said Miss Coyne. So what am I supposed to do? Check every gym in the slums of Diamond City, said Alistair with a chuckle, only slightly surprised when Barbara nodded, smiling up at her from her rested position. The woman's lavish high heels resting softly on the pillows of her couch, somehow not creasing the incredibly soft cushions. The boy is a bloody giant. He can't be that hard to find. And don't look at me like that. Ace loves you, and you love him too. Don't you think it is time for you two to fix what is broken? Alistair grumbled frustratedly. I suppose, murmured Alistair, picking up her phone and Googling gyms with potential combat classes that prepped new players for entry into Endless, hoping that her instincts wouldn't lead her in the wrong direction. Let's see how this goes. Don't you lower your fucking arm, old man. That shield is heavy, but it is the only thing keeping you alive. It is the only thing keeping your family fed. It is the only thing keeping the lights on, roared Alexander, watching as the man he instructed on the art of tanking trembled to keep the 100-pound shield he held upright. The instrument was bulky and made of metal, a tower shield resembling many of the starting defensive items inside the game of Endless, made to train many potential players to play the game at a heightened level. Alexander held not one, but 2 of the shields upright in front of him, walking in front of a dozen of his students. The line of people behind him, all struggling to push onward, as Alexander forced them to block to the left, right, above, and even jump aside while holding the shields. Drop that shield, and I'll send you home, Betty. This is not a place for weaklings. This is a home for survivors. Either push past your mental boundaries or leave. The elderly lady nodded, sweat drenching her entire figure. Though Alexander was being hard on his students, they all knew if anyone could push them to survive in the virtual world known as Endless, Ace of Blackhole was more than capable. His reputation was that of a prodigy. Even at the age of 17, as he now was, he was still well beneath the average starting age of players in Endless. The mature rated game was made for people 21 and above, which had made Alexander one of the rare few successful young players to achieve as much notoriety as he had. Much of the more violent content was only made accessible to him due to his large fan base and the permission given to him by his mother to play a game that came with post-traumatic stress warnings printed largely across the label of the game's cover. That's it, Betty. Right, left, above, jump. Now 180. The class followed the motions Alexander called out, before jumping and turning around mid-air. Alexander proud to see his entire line of students land solidly on their feet. Good, good. Let's keep this going, people. The class continued, and Alexander felt for a moment that his life was returning to normal, or as normal as it had been in a very long time. He didn't have to stress over the ever-inclining tick of his number of fans. His previous streams still paid all his bills, not that he needed money, and even... Son of a bitch, said Alexander. His thoughts cut off by the sound of the doorbell ringing to the gym, his eyes tracking the familiar face of the woman as she strode over to him. Her bob bouncing up and down as she smirked and sauntered over. Hey, Ace. You got time for an old friend?
Why? Hey, is Trey okay?
Oh no, he's blowing me up too.
Okay. Well, I am currently live, so I'm not necessarily wanting to talk about the whole situation. I was just saying I wanted to know if he was okay. Hold on, guys.
Finder. Find chapter 2 what it takes to win pages. Chapter cancel.
You said what?
Opening chapter 2 what it takes to win pages.
I'm talking to Chelsea.
Oh.
Cancel. 16%. Progress.
Hello, Grandma.
Yeah, Chosen. What are you doing?
I got on the phone with somebody.
Oh, talking
Now
on
in
the phone
chapter.
with somebody?
Now in chapter 2.
Who are you talking to?
No, she thinks you're talking on the phone with somebody.
Oh
'cause she
no,
hears
I'm
your
talking on the
voiceover.
phone with you, Chosen. That's my computer talking.
Now in chapter 1. A lost life
see?
pages.
It was my computer.
Why?
Oh,
Who is?
it helps me read stuff.
Footer. Group. Body. Page 1 of 5. In edit. So beginning of text body chapter 1. A lost life. Actions.
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
Yeah.
Why can't you hear me?
She
It's-
wanna hear you.
Deep,
She
deep,
don't
deep,
wanna
deep,
hear
deep,
that.
decrease.
It's because
system volume.
I wasn't talking, Chosen.
Why?
Why wasn't I talking? Because I was trying to show you what it
Page
was.
1 body chapter.
No.
Out of 10.
Close document. Layout area. Vertical document. In document. Layout
Why?
area.
Why?
Page 2 summary. Water and some. In page 2
Okay.
summary. Page 1 summary. Chapter 2. What it takes to win. No, said Alexander, staring down Alistair Savage. The beautiful woman body. Page 1 of 3. Edit text. Content selected body. Chapter 2. What it takes to win. No, said Alexander, staring down Alistair Savage.
I don't know what happened.
Outside.
Speech muted.
Outside.
Chapter 2. What it takes to win. No, said Alexander, staring down Alistair Savage. The beautiful woman frowned, and Alexander couldn't help but smirk. You don't even know what I'm going to ask you? Alexander looked at his students, nearly all murmuring at the sight of his former agent. The woman was famous, and far outside the standard of people normally seen inside the slums of Diamond City. Most of his students couldn't even afford to buy their own capsule or immersion pod to play endless within their own homes. Playing the virtual reality video game at cybercafes through subscription-based services was even so expensive that many could only afford a single hour a week with how coveted the time slots were. While Alistair's shoes probably cost more than the entire gym they were in. Sure I don't. Regardless, I'm busy with my class. If you're not participating, I'm going to need you to leave the exercise area, said Alexander, gesturing outside the simple exercise mats that took up much of the gym's interior. He turned around, still able to see the unmoving Alistair in one of the mirrors that lined one wall of the gym. Alistair nodded, walking to the pile of weighted shields at the edge of the room, and joined the line. He glared at the woman as she kicked off her high heels, struggling to keep the tower shield upright at the back of the line. This should be good, thought Alexander, once more raising both shields in his hands and continuing the class. He had to give it to his agent. She was drenched in sweat, breathing as if she'd just run a handful of miles, and flushed a deep crimson as she wobbled, teetering through the class without her normal, graceful presence, her hair falling out of her bun and clinging to the sides of her face as her makeup began to run. Well, Alistair, I guess you are still full of surprises, still going to make you pay my fees. His students all either gave him interested side eyes at the strangeness of the occurrence, outright frowned at his cold shoulder toward the woman, or a combination. Raised eyebrows filling the area, many of his normally very busy students all standing around to potentially witness what was about to happen. What do you want, Alistair? Asked Alexander, crouching down next to the woman. She slowly blinked up at him, lifting her arm daintily, as if searching for a comforting hand in the last moments of her life from her deathbed. Please, let my children know I love them, said Alistair, closing her eyes once Alexander took her hand. What do you want, Alistair? Water and some of those lovely sandwiches without the crust? Alistair, groaned Alexander. The woman smirked, opening her eyes and sitting up slowly. Why did you send that message, Ace? Because I woke up and saw that she wasn't playing like herself. Nothing more, nothing less, said Alexander, pulling the woman to her feet as he rose, walking to retrieve Alistair's shoes, handing them to her alongside a towel to wipe herself off with. I see, and the waves you made have nothing to do with you coming back to Endless. A little excitement for all your old fans, maybe? Alexander shook his head, glancing at the students that still stood gathered nearby. Many of the bystanders on their phones, making Alexander uncomfortable. Either start training or leave. This isn't your favorite live streams. Every one of his students returned to the workout, none leaving as they normally would. Alexander rolled his eyes, folding his arms as he returned his glare to Alistair, the woman frowning up at him. Are you really happy? I mean, I know why you quit, but would this life for you really make her happy? What happened to the young man that I met with dreams of conquering the world? I lost my mother. I lost what pushed me to explore that fucking game, and should be happy with everything I have now, my students, my home, and everything I've already accomplished, said Alexander, unable to keep down his building frustration, looking away from the tears that rose to the surface of Alistair's eyes. But are you happy, Ace? As happy as I have the space to be in my grief, Alistair, and that is good enough for me right now. Then why not give me an hour of content? We can restrict your channel to those that stayed subscribed to you. I know that you would have to start fresh because of what happened to your last character, but something small could be fun for you. There is no part of me that believes for a second that you don't miss playing. Alexander turned at the sound of shields dropping throughout the gym, realizing what the class was doing. I'm not coming back to Endless, you idiots. Don't waste your money. My old agency makes more money at the mere hint that I will return to the game than some of you make in 10 years or more. Save your money for game time, said Alexander, seeing his in-game profile pop up on the screens of nearly his entire class. One of his students even on the purchase page for in-game playtime with a streamer, the site making Alexander wonder the teenager's background. Alexander's playtime requests were in the six-figure margins, far outside what anyone from the slums could afford. Really, even you, Betty, your son is a streamer and you don't even pay for his feed. What are you doing? The elderly lady looked around as her cheeks reddened, shrugging as she used the facial recognition feature of her phone to complete her purchase. My son is rated lower than me in the stream rankings, and I've only been at this for a month junior. Even if I only get an hour of content like the little lady asked for, I'll probably learn more about the game in that hour than the hours I wasted watching my brat of a son. Alexander sighed, looking away from his students and back toward the now smiling Alistair. I have things to do, Ali. I'll see you around, said Alexander, striding past his former agent without another thought. He dropped both the training shields he held at the edge of the room, pulled out his hoodie from his gym bag that sat by the door, noticing the snow begin to fall heavily outside. You have my number, Ace. Call me if you change. Alistair stopped speaking as the door shut, and Alexander began to jog off down the street. Your mind? Alexander stopped by the local gas station on the way home, unable to stop thinking of a game that, until he'd seen his former agent, hadn't honestly considered playing in quite a long time. He found the shelf filled with his favorite cups of ramen, somehow managing to grab nearly the entire shelf of cups without dropping more than two, bending to pick up the rolling shrimp and beef cups before heading to the counter. No water today? Asked the cashier. Alexander simply shook his head, trying to remember the name of the pretty dark-skinned girl that always seemed to be at the gas station, helping him nearly every time he stopped by, morning, noon, or night. The little he could remember of the girl was that her family owned the decently sized gas station, often resulting in her rubbed eyes greeting him in pajamas at peculiar hours. Katrina, I think. He almost tried the name for a chance at gained familiarity. A hope for reputation points that would never come was now ingrained in his blood after so many hours of playing in virtual worlds online that he shook his head as he closed his mouth. Just ask next time, dummy. No, got some delivered yesterday, responded Alexander instead, watching the smiling girl scan one of each type of ramen, counting each flavor before she typed into her register, rather than scanning each cup as she bagged them. I see. Well, if you need anything else, you know where we are. Open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, said the young woman, chuckling. Alexander smiled, waving as he grabbed his bags and ventured off back into the snow. He couldn't help but smile as he ran through the slums. The sight of the snow changed the normally dingy, trash-laden streets into a wonderland of white snow and ancient architecture. The buildings of his home were built so long ago that many that lived in the slums wondered how they were still all standing. the once regal atmosphere now giving an impoverished air that Alexander loved and appreciated rather than scorned. "Anywhere is beautiful if the sun shines and people can be happy," said Alexander to himself, turning down the street he lived on, increasing his speed as the snow increased for what he felt to be the third time since he left his gym. He finally made it to his apartment building and rushed inside, quickly entering the door code before entering, making sure the security door shut behind him before he strode toward the stairs, not wanting to have to deal with the up and down of the strangely designed elevator inside his building. The machine programmed to go toward every floor a button was pressed, rather than dropping off those going down or up before changing directions. He made it back into his apartment to see his ex still streaming, the holy mechanist making her way toward a never-before-seen boss in the area that she fought through. He set his bag by the door, dropping his noodles on his cluttered kitchen table before preparing a cup for himself. His microwave dinged shortly thereafter, Alexander forcing himself not to check his phone, gladly retrieving his meal and an apple before sitting down and watching the only thing he ever watched while home. "This should be interesting," said Alexander, looking over all the available data on screen. Since Alexander paid for Brittany's highest package available to her viewers, he was able to see many things that many others did not while watching her. The only reason he was able to notice what abilities were being used by his ex was due to the package's offered features. This didn't truly give any players that may face off against the young woman any real edge against her, as every single class in the game was entirely unique as much as a person's thumbprint. Many of her fans knew what her attacks, spells, skills, buffs, abilities, techniques, and even her stat breakdown was, but trying to mimic what she'd created would only ever result in failure. The only things that players could share with each other was picked from a long list of abilities chosen when logging in for the very first time. This very first ability designated the type of gameplay that a player would be directed toward, but wasn't limited to. Just because a player picked Fireball as their first ability didn't mean that they would be a pure caster or magical character, as it wasn't until the first 11 choices were designated that options became more restricted. This meant that within the first 11 ability choices given to a player, everything they wanted to experience within the game must be chosen, or a player wouldn't be able to expand into new areas of gameplay without achieving something extraordinary to unlock added or special features. With more than 1 million available options being given to players, the uniqueness of classes was incredible, especially due to the growth of the options being given to players. When a player quit the game by deleting characters, being banned from the servers, or dying in real life, much of their custom class becomes available to those still playing, or that joined later. This feature alone was majorly what made Endless grow in popularity, as the creativity of its players fueled a system with countless options given to its fans. Players that died in real life were even taken by the game's AI and used to create quests. The once living person sometimes immortalized as an NPC within the game itself. Endless didn't struggle to make more content for its players, as a mere conversation between the virtual world's occupants, living or virtual, could result in literal dungeons being created. Zones being built and discovered by those whose imaginations spawned the new destinations was common. And many who played knew without a doubt that absolutely anything within game was not only possible, but likely to occur and be made exciting to live through. Many solo players made livings by sharing their personal experiences, making Endless an absolute media giant. Television was a thing of the past. Dramas, comedies, action, all could be found within the streams, from medieval to urban content, all the way to futuristic sci-fi was available and growing. Alexander glanced over his shoulder, setting down his empty noodles, looking at what any who entered his apartment would assume to be an absolute mountain of clothing left unwashed and ignored. He rose to his feet and stepped around his couch, walking the expanse that was his living room and toward the pile. The mini mountain of clothes honestly smelled horrible, and Alexander frowned as he smelled the aroma wafting into the air at their brief trip to the ground. Was all that came as he felt a tinge in the back of his mind, like that of the tastes common to drinkers and drug users. A call to action that made his heart beat and his palms begin to sweat at a suffocated excitement. I'm not truly considering this, am I? Alexander swept his hand across the top of the pile, scattering even more clothing onto the ground, uncovering the obsidian metallic surface of his virtual reality pod with a sigh. He looked around at his destroyed apartment and sighed even more heavily as he resigned himself to what needed to be done, starting by delicately picking up the broken glass of the mirror he'd broken in a rage the night prior. With how long it's been, I've more than likely lost all my levels and abilities. Maybe even all of my secret unlocks and bonus abilities. You could look at this like a second chance, Ace. Not like you didn't regret not being a magical class your first play through, said Alexander as he pushed the previous night's issues aside, knowing that yesterday's anniversary would return a year later and his unprocessed feelings would drift to the surface once again, hoping that with more time to heal, he wouldn't continue to act so violent at the mere thought of his memories. Alexander spoke aloud, directing his wall screen to turn up the volume as he focused on his work. He continued by picking up the clothing all around his apartment, separating the clothing into groups. The white clothing in one pile, the colored clothing in another pile, and his towels and bedding in another. The rotted food and long-forgotten dishes he found underneath various piles made him gag, causing Alexander to turn his focus inward, consistently distracting himself by watching his ex play their favorite game, while he strategized on how he wanted to play. He started his first load of laundry, while throwing away absurd amounts of trash throughout his condo, knowing that if it wasn't for the rodent-deterrent electrical systems installed into the perimeter of the apartment building, that he'd long ago have attracted rats and roaches, finding himself thankful that he'd paid to have the machines that vibrated with frequencies that deterred pests from entry into the tenement. By his fourth bag of trash, Alexander was beginning to see his flaw, and smiled, honestly feeling rewarded in a way that he hadn't felt in quite a long time. The cleaning process took hours, but gave him plenty of time to think out what he both wanted to accomplish, and many ideas on how to make his new path possible. This will only work if I can use those garbage skills in the way that I think I can. He pulled up a series of videos on YouTube of failed skill creations attempted by many players in the past. His screen split between Brittany's stream and the well-edited playlist of Endless's many promising players, trying things in-game that they once believed would bring them power. The game was built on the premise that anything was possible, but due to the countless attempts by very intelligent people to develop skills in the game leading nowhere, many paths were left behind and never used again, as many players felt that a meta for the game's most powerful combinations had long ago been found, leaving players to hyper-focus on a finite number of selections. This resulted in min-maxing. Stealth characters focused on agility and anything that developed speed and flexibility. Strength characters primarily dealt in vitality, increasing their in-game fortitudes, while magic characters delivered considerable damage through intelligence, lacked survivability without external assistance, and died the most during player versus player content. Many of the mixture of these fundamental stat types had in the beginning been very powerful. However, over time, pure stat players began a tyrannical reign that couldn't be ignored, twisting the populace to play inside a particular set of guidelines. Guidelines that Alexander wanted to break. At level 0, players were allowed to pick any number of 0-star abilities, skills, or spells, which included any and all crafting options, as well as basic skills like running, stealth, climbing, and more. They could also pick 3 1-star abilities, a single 2-star ability alongside a single 1-star, or a single 3-star ability. Spells also were rated on a star rating from 0 to 11, with legendary 12th level and mythical 13th level abilities, and spells still being unseen within the game as of yet, outside the most powerful NPCs using them as raid bosses. However, Alexander had a hypothesis that he felt could change the game forever. This was due to a video he'd seen of a player finding a raid boss on accident years earlier. The powerful boss was assaulted by a few hundred players all at once, and in a single moment every player died. "Absorb!" yelled the raid boss on screen, and Alexander winced as more than 300 players were drained of their health in a matter of seconds. The raid boss had only lost 1% of its total health value, gaining it all back as the raid group lay dead at its feet. The grotto that held the druidic raid boss was never again approached, and still hadn't been attempted as far as Alexander knew, but what was attempted many times after the video went viral was the use of the 1-star ability known as Absorb. The ability was tried by numerous players, only to be discarded by practically all who'd used it, as none figured out how to increase the power of the basic ability. Many players then defaulted to take higher star Absorb-based abilities with characteristics synonymous to Absorb in their titles, such as the 3-star, Mana Drain, or Life Drain abilities. Another player fail video was that of a necromancer who'd managed to make his Absorb ability do far more than any others who'd attempted to level the ability. However, being a pure intelligence caster inevitably resulted in the player having to give up on the path when he couldn't figure out what spell or ability was required to rank the ability up, forcing the player to discard the ability after he out-leveled Absorb. Skills, spells, and abilities all needed various unknown components to rank up and gain stars, becoming far more powerful than their previous forms. Which was why Alexander was beginning to believe that it was actually the one-star skills, spells, and abilities that were the most powerful, and the higher star ranks that were easier to use, while being far more restricted in their overall capabilities and in game flexibility to fit player needs. As he continued to clean his condo, Alexander made note of all the abilities, spells, and skills that he believed were actually being used incorrectly. He finished his dishes before taking out more than 10 trash bags into the hallway trash chute, feeling a sense of triumph as he opened the hatch and tossed away months of gathered clutter. He swept and mopped before allowing his long unused Roomba to vacuum, having to empty the machine dozens of times. His counters were wiped down, his fridge was cleaned, resulting in 2 more bags of trash. His bathroom grew to a near sparkle, becoming spotless after 3 scrub downs. Alexander watching Brittany's feed, his mirror able to cast whatever he watched throughout the rest of his home as he worked. The cleaner his home became, the more excited he grew to play. He finally finished after countless hours of hard work, sitting down just as Brittany logged off for her mandatory hour of external upkeep. All players who used VR capsules and pods required to log off for at least a single hour a day due to the restrictions set by the game producer's safety regulations. Alexander's eyebrow rose as a familiar chime came from his phone, and he picked it up to see a beautiful blonde, and a message that made him smirk as he read it aloud to himself. So big head, you ready to come back yet?
Boom. Chapter 2, guys. Sorry. My grandbaby called. And she is one thing that is the exception to my every rule, so I would normally not want to walk away from stream or let anything interrupt it, but no, I'm always going to answer the phone for that little girl. We are moving
Speech
on to
unmuted.
number
Chapter
3.
3, the return pages. Chapter 2, what it takes to win close window.
And I was also hungry.
Finder. Chapter 3, the read pages. Cancel. Opening Chapter 3, the return pages.
I heated up.
You are currently on a button.
My,
To click this button, press Control,
Chinese food from
Option,
earlier.
Space.
I had some Singapore me fun.
Cancel. Button. 19%. Progress in. Now in Chapter 3, the return pages, window. Document. Layout area. Body. Page 1 of 3. Edit text. Content selected body. Chapter 3. The return.
Boom.
Chapter 3. The
Speech
return.
muted.
I'd be lying if I said I haven't been thinking about it, said Alexander speaking as he typed a response. Malice. You got a plan. You know that your character is still fucked, right? Ace, I've been thinking about a few things I could try, but if they don't work out, I may have to restart completely. Malice, and lose all of your bonuses. Fuck that. I'll buy your tune and figure out a way to play him my damn self for your stat legacy alone. Ace, haha. Going to need that to get out of my predicament, to be honest. Don't know that a restart from level 0 will even be possible without it. Malice, you're really considering this, aren't you? Ace, yeah, but don't tell anyone. If I do, it will be for my enjoyment only. Think I may even lock my profile from taking on new subs if I come back. This time won't be for the money. Malice, you'll have to, and you better hope that enough people don't petition Epistem to unlock your account. My last lock didn't even last an entire day. Damn it, I forgot Epistem could even do that, mumbled Alexander, remembering that the company that owned Endless Isekai Online had the ability to unlock streamer accounts to be viewed by the public if the accounts had large enough fan bases. Some people were so addicted to watching the best players in the world that issues resulted with suicides and self-harm until Epistem stepped in and gave their audiences what they wanted, whenever they wanted it. Ace? Well, if I do come back, I at least have a day before most of my old fans will even know that I'm streaming beyond those with access to my highest package. Alexander began to pace as they spoke to one another. The conversation was so enjoyable that he lost himself. They talked about his plans, and before Alexander knew it, he found himself forced to recognize that he was going to start playing again, and maybe even sooner than he was ready to. Before long, Brittany's hour break was over, and she wished him good luck, nearly begging him to come back. He groaned, looking back at the pod in his living room, stepping closer, putting his phone down on the side table next to his capsule. His phone chimed once more, and Alexander picked it back up, reading over the notification from Endless Isekai that popped up on his lock screen. Endless Isekai Online. 30 minutes until character deletion. Son of a bitch. Alexander dropped his phone back down on the side table and lifted the capsule's cover, laying down in the bed that cost more than the entire neighborhood he lived in. The interior of the capsule was spacious enough for him to change into the haptic suit that hung luckily for him, already clean and waiting for him inside. He quickly hooked up the tubing that connected to the cup of the haptic suit for waste and bit down on the mouthpiece that connected to the tubing that would feed him from the liquid MRE pouches secured beneath the capsule's base. He set his hands into the grooves that fed into the 4 components and the Lancet device that would check blood sugars and nutrient levels every 10 hours or so in-game, none of which was needed in the more advanced pods. But Alexander dismissed the thought, preparing for the normally jarring shift from reality into the virtual world of Endless. Looks like it's now or never. The capsule closed and locked. A series of systems checks began to fill the surface of the screen above him, as lights scanned both the inside of his capsule and his entire apartment for multiple reasons. The external scan was for security, checking to ensure that his perimeter was locked down and that no intruders were within the area, as well as to see if everything on his daily upkeep priority checklist had been completed. Daily workout, check daily cleaning chores, check mandatory caloric intake, check. Everything on his external scan was checked off his list, green check marks filling the screen, until the results for his internal checklist came back completely. Mandatory hygiene maintenance, error capsule filter maintenance, error backup waste, air, 4 and MRE containers maintained, error. Son of a bitch, roared Alexander around the mouthpiece. Alexander pressed the interior button for the latch, cursing at himself for forgetting that the capsule had its own checklist that needed to be completed before play. He nearly yanked the tubing out of the machine. Forgetting to detach the haptic suit from the capsule before, he darted into his bedroom, grabbing an air tank, stacking it on top of a case of 4S, as well as another case of liquid MRRs and an empty waste container that he pulled from the base of his closet. Again thankful that he had secondary provisions ready at all times. The hardened glass cases still reminded him of what was normally seen in movies inside the briefcases of secret agents that dealt with aliens. He was truly bothered by their contents, from their deep green and blue colors, and even the fact that the pouches within seemed to jiggle as if gelatinous. While in-game, all you taste is real food. While in-game, all you taste is real food, thought Alexander mentally, trying not to look down at what he held as he rushed. It didn't take him long at all to open the correct panels and locate the long unused equipment. Lucky that the features within, as long as plugged in, maintained the sterilization of all internal parts and segments. This stuff would be bad enough without inhaling dust every time you forgot to clean it. He exchanged the containers and air tanks successfully, hopping back into the capsule and reattaching himself. His apartment and the interior of the pod once again scanned, only for red X's to still fill some of the list. Son of a bitch. Alexander hopped out of the capsule, rushing to throw away the old biodegradable waste tank in the recycling, and the 4 and MRE containers in the trash chute. Before he took his backup air tank into his bedroom, setting the tank on a device within his closet made to clean the tank and refill the extra tank with pressurized and sterilized oxygen. He nearly hopped back into the capsule before catching a whiff of his armpit. He roared his frustration as he ran into his bathroom and hopped into the shower, frantically bathing himself as he simultaneously brushed his teeth, barely managing to wash his hair with 5 minutes left on his deletion timer, putting on his backup haptic suit from his closet, assuming that his smelly body had previously more than likely soiled the one he'd had on. He had to entirely dry himself off before dressing once more in the required capsule attachment used to send in-game feed back to his body, making sure to fold his towel and re-hang it on the rack within his bathroom, once more diving into the capsule. Come on, yelled Alexander as he scrambled to find the mouthpiece and bit down. The system check passed, and Alexander sighed in relief as he saw the update trailer begin to play, knowing that he'd made it in time as the personalized video caught him up. Welcome back, child of Omni. The beautiful woman's voice filled his ears, and gas began to fill the pod as his mind started to sync with the capsule, putting him into a hypnotized state as he took in the video. You have missed much while you have been away from the realms of Endless. He blinked slowly as the external video began to play within his mind's eye, everything seen becoming viewable with his eyes closed as his senses merged with the technology of the capsule. He knew that the process of going online not only put him to sleep, but also activated the nanobots inserted into the bloodstream. The nanobots were mandatory for full immersion to be possible, but Alexander couldn't help but mentally link the sensation of falling that overwhelmed his senses as he entered the game to the same feeling that washed over him when he stepped through portals within endless isekai. Wouldn't that be amazing? Maybe one day we'll be able to close our eyes and end up in the lands of our dreams. Damn, don't think I'll ever get used to that, said Alexander to himself as he felt his body waking up within the game world. Much has changed in the world. Flashes of magical kingdoms filled his vision, and Alexander felt as if he was being pulled through the skies above the world he was entering. Clouds whipping around him as he watched lands below him change in a beautiful high-speed shift, as kingdoms seemingly rose and fell in every direction he looked. Many of the changes he already was aware of, with a few exceptions. Atlantis was no longer underwater, nor was it an island, instead becoming an entire floating continent that sat above the clouds like that of the lost realm of Olympus that had still yet to be found within the game by players. His home city of origin had dropped from the third most populated starting zone to the seventh, which didn't surprise him, knowing that much of its original allure to players had been because of his presence and guild, both of which no longer resided within origin. Even further was the war of the guilds that was reportedly minor outside the game, showed signs of being far more far-reaching than players had implied it had become. What the fuck happened? Much of the traveler communities have struggled to stay peaceful, many of which believe is a direct result of your absence and the leadership once offered by your now disbanded guild. The next scenes showed a battle lost by his guild that occurred after he'd stopped playing, while a split screen showed his previously captured avatar being dragged through the streets of an elven kingdom in chains, only to be left in a prison cell lined in magical runes. His character forced to sit in a throne-like chair in the center of his cell, his hands kept in place by stone perfectly wrapped around his due to being fused to the back of the chair's spine. He remembered the day that he was punished and forced to be eternally connected to the chair. The horrific memory still fresh in his mind, still plaguing his nightmares on occasion, often waking him up drenched in sweat and screaming. Damn! Successfully conquered the kingdom, the land of stone and majestic forestry dying, leaving behind only undead and a dead land completely without vegetation of any kind. Well, I didn't know that happened. Alexander had already been in a terrible situation before the kingdom he'd been taken into had been conquered, as even the commoners within the elven kingdom had reached levels beyond 100, only to be killed off by an even more powerful undead nation. An undead nation that now ruled with an iron fist throughout every sector of the kingdom, from its borders all the way to the dungeon at the heart of the palace's underground catacombs, from what the update video showed Alexander. His astral projected form able to take in many details that he knew would need his later consideration if he was truly going to play his character from the beginning. Since you have waited to return, much of your gathered strength has been returned to the realms for your peers to obtain, leaving you to have to make new choices. Good luck, child of Omni. Your journey as a traveler will now begin once more. The scene ended showing Alexander's character sitting within his prison cell, forced to look upward at the ceiling above. The only sight offered to him that of a painted mural showing a scene of the former Elven Kingdom. His perspective shifted from an astral projected camera angle to once more within, and his character sheet popped up within his vision, forcing him to select new level 0 options. Alexander immediately closing his eyes to stop from seeing the magical painting above, knowing that its power could strip him of his ability to focus entirely, knowing that he could still access his in-game overlay even with his eyes closed. Name: Alexander Cerberus Elysium race, Elven giant racial bonus, Elven regeneration physique of the giant's level, 0 abilities, none skills, none spells, none available stat points, 0 legacies, a fraction of godhood. Statistics: war and might, 0 strength and density, 0 endurance, 0 vitality and regeneration, 0 stealth and survival, 0 dexterity and balance, 0 agility and flexibility, 0 accuracy, 0 mind and magic, 0 intelligence, 0 wisdom and will, 0 spirit and faith, 0. Notification: would you like to choose a primary stat category? Yes, no. Would you like to choose a favored substat? Yes, no. Would you like to pick an ability? Yes, no. Would you like to pick a superior skill? Yes, no. Would you like to pick a spell? Yes, no. Free slots available, 3 of 3. Yes, Alexander tried to roar in excitement, his voice muffled by the stone wrapped around his mouth. He couldn't believe his luck, his legacy still on his character sheet, He mentally brought up the description of his legacy, reading the prompt to confirm that his main asset worked as it previously had. A fraction of godhood. All secondary stats are equal to 1/10 of your chosen primary stat, or highest allocated stat value, with the exception of a single chosen substat that will equal your primary stat category. If the primary stat and the substat are in the same category, your overall level will not be affected. Additionally, all bonus stats given by your legacy will not increase your overall level. Deaths obtained outside player versus player instances will result in the loss of this legacy. You have been warned, traveler. Good luck, child of Omni. Now, let's see if we can break out of prison, my boy. Darren gasped. He couldn't believe his eyes. The notification that had popped up on his screen made his mouth fall open, a mere blink before he shrieked in excitement. The tall, brown-haired boy put on his beanie, tucking his brown curls in his hat, catching a glimpse of his green eyes and the lock screen of his phone as he rushed to gather himself. Darren, honey, is everything okay? Yelled his mother, as he jumped to his feet and darted out of their lavish living room, still screaming. I know, I fucking see it, yelled Darren, answering his phone to his best friend Tyrone, who was also screaming at the top of his lungs. The young man seemingly unable to speak an intelligible word, both he and Darren continuously shrieking in absolute excitement. The dread-headed young man's hair the only thing visible on the FaceTime call, as his best friend jumped around his room wildly, putting on clothes in a rush. Not wanting to wait for the elevator that led to his floor of his family's compound, Darren ran up 6 flights of stairs, completely winded and wheezing by the time he made it into his room. Alexa, bring up Ace the Primordial's Twitch stream, please, yelled Darren, turning to face a wall screen the size of an Olympic swimming pool. A single swipe later, and the FaceTime box that held his friend's image was moved from his phone to a corner of his giant television. Darren flopped down on his couch, using DoorDash to order far too many pizzas. Then he heard his sister Olivia screaming and running toward his bedroom, and chuckled to himself. Or maybe just enough pizzas. He heard his sister on the phone well down the hall, glad to know that the extra food wouldn't go to waste. No bitch, Darren won't care. Get your ass over here right now. And tell everyone else, I'm about to order some food for everyone as payment for him letting us use his theater, so hurry the fuck up. Already ordered pizza's big sis. Did you order enough for the rest of the guildies? Darren just gave his sister a side-eye before rolling his eyes at her, ignoring the brunette's barely clothed body. Long used to his supermodel sister's hatred of wearing anything that couldn't be considered underwear. I'll take that as a yes. But Tyrone just texted the group chat. I guess everyone else is coming over too, so I'll still put in an Instacart order for more snacks. Noted, responded Darren, pressing a button on the tablet installed into the arm of his couch, causing the large open space both behind and around his current seat to be filled with more places to sit. Couches and love seats rising up from sliding panels in the floor that opened before more furniture filled the previously empty area. What the fuck did he just do? Asked Olivia. Darren's mouth fell open as his hero scrolled down the unfathomably numerous skill options to select a dead skill known as Skill Collector. He didn't really just pick a dead skill, did he? Darren looked toward the corner of his screen to see his best friend Tyrone frowning. Tyrone's brown eyes narrowed as he stared at the screen he watched in shock. Collector and Spell Collector all removed the maximum number of selections that could be held in any of those categories. Normally, only 11 choices could be gained from the system shop per level, and these 3 unique selections had once been thought to be mythical in nature, until players realized that having access to everything was far too unrefined and unfocused to result in real power. Players with the Collector frameworks distracted by leveling everything, easily overtaken by players that honed in on a few powerful choices. The upsides of the Collector frameworks at level 0 were that the choices didn't take up one of the 3 available slots given to players, allowing for them to not only have limitless slots within the category, but also giving them the option to pick another 1-star selection from that same category within the system shop. This meant that though Ace had selected the 0-star option of Collector for abilities, skills, and spells, he would still get to make an additional selection in each category. What the fuck is he doing? Doesn't he know that one... asked Olivia. He's not the type to make idiotic decisions like the rest of the noobs that play, continued Darren's sister. This was the downside of the Collector frameworks. Unlike any other frameworks in the game, the Collector frameworks made it so that players could only learn and gain abilities, skills, and spells from gameplay, completely locking them out of the shop. Permanently for each category, the Collector framework was chosen for. Normally, frameworks were given to basic classes, like Warrior, Mage, Paladin, Rogue, Hunter, Druid. These options made it so that players without experience had a path that could start them off with a strong foundation. These frameworks were very limiting in the early game, but eventually left players to their own devices, forcing them to branch out and take steps toward creating their own class. Yet what Alexander had just done left his fans absolutely confused and even disheartened. "You don't think he sold his character to a fucking noob, do you?" asked Darren. "No, I already checked the auction page on Epistem's site. His account hasn't been sold. He did lock it, though. For whatever reason, he doesn't want any more subscribers," offered Tyrone. Darren glancing over to see his friend in the back of his limousine, scrolling through the comments on the stream as Ace's channel played widescreen on one of the car's large side windows. "What in the absolute fuck is going on here?" asked Olivia as Ace made 3 more selections that left the young woman as confused as her brother. Absorb as a spell. Fucking retarded. Mana manipulation as a skill. Fucking stupid. And stat converter as an ability. Are you fucking kidding me? Doesn't that just make it so you can empty your entire mana pool for a single stat point? Yelled Darren in frustration. "Yeah," responded Olivia, before she plopped down next to her brother, feeling sick to her stomach at watching her in-game hero throw all his hard work away. "What are we missing here?" asked Olivia, and her brother shrugged before responding. "I have absolutely no idea."
Speech unmuted.
He's doing his thing. He's doing his
Close
thing
window.
already.
Finder. Endless Isaac. Chapter 2, what Chapter 3, the return pages. Chapter 4, are you not entertained? Pages. Cancel. Button. Opening Chapter 4, are you not entertained? Pages. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space. Now in Chapter 4, are you not entertained? Pages. Body. Page 1 of 3. Edit text. Content selected. Body. Chapter 4, are you not entertained?
Chapter 4.
Speech muted.
Are you not entertained? Name. Alexander Cerberus Elysium race. Elven giant racial bonus. Elven regeneration physique of the giant's level. 0 abilities. Ability collector. Stat converter. Use your entire mana pool, if full, to convert your mana into a single stat point. Skills. Skill collector. Mana manipulation. With each level gained in this skill, increase your control over mana both inside and outside your body and mana veins. Spells. Spell collector. Absorb, draw in external energies into the body. Available stat points, 0 legacies, a fraction of godhood. Statistics. War and might, 0 strength and density, 0 endurance, 0 vitality and regeneration, 0 stealth and survival, 0 dexterity and balance, 0 agility and flexibility, 0 accuracy, 0 mind and magic, 0 intelligence, 0 wisdom and will, 0 spirit and faith, 0. Okay, now for the hard part. Alexander had made his selections and had a plan. A plan that entirely depended on him being able to get a skill he'd never used before to work. A skill that only one player he'd ever known had gotten to work and never shared to anyone how he'd gotten it to work. Hopefully using this spell will make things easy on me. Alexander focused on his only spell and mentally spoke the name of the spell he wanted to use. Absorb. At first, Alexander felt nothing. As a primarily pure might and arms player previously, Alexander had no experience using spells of any kind. All of his tanking abilities, skills, and spells used no mana, were all instant casts, and truly needed nothing more than a single thought to use. This was not how spells in Endless Isekai worked at all. Casters in trial areas used to train new players were taught how to use spells, learning how to draw from their mana pools and push their magical energies into whatever spell was being used. Lessons Alexander was never given, nor could he access outside the game. Players that posted this information online were either banned from the game, had their comments and/or accounts deleted, or found every bit of content scrubbed from online before even a dozen views were gained on YouTube or any other popular services. If Alexander would have had more time before the deletion of his character would have occurred, he would have spoken to one of his many trainees, or joined one of the many private online clubs that shared information for a price. With how much Epistem paid its security branch to keep the in-game experience pure, the specifics on how the game mechanics worked were relatively locked down. Players could share what combination of choices they made in-game with each other, but how to use those individual skills, abilities, and spells was more than frowned upon. but instead was outright banned by the user agreement players signed before playing. Alexander felt nothing more than a tingle at the limits of his fingertips and sighed, gaining no notifications or prompts. Guess it couldn't be that easy, right? He took a deep breath and closed his eyes, forcing back his growing anxiety at his plan seemingly beginning to unravel before it could even truly start. If Alexander was being honest with himself, his new path would be far more treacherous than his previous had been. His might makes right mentality was a staple of how he played the game in more ways than one. Normally, Alexander smashed, demolished, and killed his way through any potential in-game hurdles. With his previously incredible health and durability, crushing adversity had been easy and simple. Now, however, Alexander wanted a change, needed it in fact. His mind relaxed as he resigned himself to his new path. There was no going back now that he'd made his new selections, and his future exploration of magic had already begun whether he liked it or not. You have nothing better to do. You're playing for yourself now. This isn't for anyone's enjoyment but your own ace, so let's do this. What the fuck is he doing, meditating? Asked Darren. He paced in his bedroom, his room now filled with not only his guild, but his sisters as well. The chatter caused by the nearly 200 members making it hard to hear. The room had been transformed into the equivalent of a police headquarters investigation room. The guilds were even using incident boards to gather materials and post their hypothesis on what Ace could be doing. They wouldn't care if this were any other player. But seeing on how their combined guilds all used to be a single entity, following the man once known in-game as the immortal Cerberus Alexander, every bit of what Ace was now doing was more than substantial to them all. He's not answering any of his comments either. Do you think he has his in-game chat turned off? Asked Tyrone at the edge of the crowd nearest to Darren. Definitely, responded Darren. I don't know why, but he's playing completely differently. I mean, usually he'd have interacted with everyone in chat. I mean, they are giving him hints and advice by the page. Honestly lost count of the amount of dummy accounts that have been banned for giving him suggestions on how to make the game mechanics work for what he's chosen, continued Darren. He's playing like a casual. I bet he doesn't even have his stream counter on. He probably doesn't even know how many people are watching him, said Olivia in a near whisper. Darren's eyes darted over to the number of viewers logged in to Ace's stream, completely mind-blown by the 100 million viewers that had already joined, giving their full attention and time to watching his friend simply meditate. Epistem News is going live right now, yelled one of the guild members, and Darren chuckled, clicking a button on his couch's built-in remote, leaning down to bring up the news channel in the corner of his television. His nerves were so rattled that he found himself unable to sit, continuing to pace as the beautiful red-headed green-eyed anchor, known as Allie Good, started to speak frantically, giving Darren the impression that she was as bewildered by Ace's actions as he and everyone in his room were. Today is a beautiful day, or at least it should have been, for all those watching. Hopefully you aren't becoming aware of the return of the immortal Cerberus to the realms of Endless due to our broadcast. But if so, please don't get your hopes up, said the female anchor. With a wave of a hand, Ace's stream began to play from its beginning as the woman spoke. Much of what has been done by one of the world's most fabled players since he returned is an absolute mystery. Thus far, he has chosen tools seen as useless, confused all who are trying to communicate with him in-game through an outright silence, and furthermore done nothing more than... The woman trailed off, lifting a hand to her ear as a message from her broadcast team was relayed to her. She nodded, frowning at first, until her eyes went wide, and before Darren and the rest of those gathered could wonder what was happening, a prompt popped up on Ace's live stream. Notification. New skill learned. Meditation unlocked. Meditation. Through a considerable commitment to breathing and clearing your mind, you have unlocked the meditation skill. This skill allows for you to increase your regeneration, as well as increasing your focus. As of now, your basic meditation cannot be used while moving, but with further practice that may change, unlocking further meditative traits, thrumming with light and power. Darren looked toward his sister and best friend as the meditation status effect popped up in the corner of Alexander's display. Did you know that unlocking things as a pure collector framework gave stat points? Both shook their heads. Darren's mind began to race. Yo, is he about to do what I think he's going to do? Asked Tyrone. No motherfucking way, said Olivia, coming to her feet as Ace spent his first stat point. Yeah, I think he is, said Darren, glancing at the number of viewers as a chime indicated an increase on channel activity. This may get interesting. Alexander smiled, feeling a unique calm fill his body, unlike anything he'd ever felt in game before. He spent his first stat point, placing it in mind and magic, causing another pop-up to fill his vision. Notification. New ability unlocked. Mana pool unlocked. Mana pool. Through your efforts, you have unlocked a mana pool. With this, you have as you are building a foundation built to uncover what true power is. Plus 10 stat points. Is that why I couldn't use Absorb? I didn't even have a fucking mana pool to cast spells with. Now, in the corner of his vision sat a golden bar directly underneath his health. This confused Alexander, as he'd seen mana bars for other players previously, all of which had been a soft blue color. I wonder what that means, thought Alexander, momentarily focusing on his new resource pool. After briefly contemplating the difference between what he'd seen before and what he was currently experiencing, Alexander pushed on to the next step of his plan. First, I need to pick my primary stat category. Alexander chose Mind and Magic. What this would do for him is allow any potential magical training to be increased in speed. Any experience gained in magical areas within game would come far more easily and should offer bonuses that non-magical classes couldn't gain access to. Now that that is done, I need to choose a favored substat. Alexander immediately thought he should place his selection within the Stealth and Survival category, but then took a moment to think. He wanted to be harder to hit, or be able to stay out of sight of his enemies far more easily. However, from how his legacy worked, that may be a trait he would gain with time and patience. No, my new power resides with mana, so the more mana I have access to, the better, right? Alexander chose the substat, Vitality and Regeneration, feeling his decision was perfect. Not only would his choice increase how much mana he could regain over time, it would also increase his overall health. He almost then immediately put all the stat points he gained into Mind and Magic, but then remembered how the next step of his plan would be affected by having a larger mana pool. Don't get too excited, Ace. Take your time and learn everything you need to. He took a second and looked over his character sheet, checking on all the changes. Name: Alexander Cerberus Elysium race. Elven giant racial bonus. Elven regeneration physique of the giant's level. 0 abilities. Ability collector. Stat converter. Use your entire mana pool if full to convert your mana into a single stat point. Mana pool. Internalize the energies of creation and destruction, gaining access to magic and spells. Skills. Skill collector. Mana manipulation. With each level gained in this skill, increase your control over mana both inside and outside your body and mana veins. Meditation. Increase regeneration and focus. Spells. Spell collector. Absorb. Draw in external energies into the body. Available stat points, 10 legacies, a fraction of Godhood primary stat category, Mind and Magic favored substat, Vitality and Regeneration. Statistics. War and Might. 0.1 Strength and Density. 0.5% Stealth and Survival. 0.1% Dexterity and Balance. 0.1% Agility and Flexibility. 0.1% Accuracy. 0.1% Mind and Magic. 1 Intelligence. 0.1% Wisdom and Will. Spirit and Faith. 0.1. Wow, that changed rather quickly. How long have I been playing? He looked at his in-game timer and smiled, seeing that only a few hours in-game had passed. Okay, let's see how this ability works, thought Alexander, growing excited. He hadn't had so much fun in what felt like an eternity to him. Something had always been missing before when he played, and now Alexander had felt he found what he truly needed. A true challenge. Let's do this. What did he just do? Said the anchor in the corner of Darren's television. The broadcast was still ongoing, and everyone in his room had lowered their conversations to subtle murmurs as they all watched in amazement. Darren had even stopped pacing, completely captivated. The comments in the live stream mimicking his own wild thoughts. Ding! Aaron Gaming Live! I didn't know you could do that with meditation. Ding! Solar Sister Yo! Has anyone ever seen a mana pool unlocked without a trainer? Ding! Slept with your mother, I am ashamed to say this, but I think I might start fresh. Hate to say it, but he looks like he's having more fun than me, and he's locked inside a fucking prison cell. Ding! Bored with bombs. This is cheating, right? Are they going to patch this? Or did this motherfucker just break the game again? Holy motherfucking Christ! Yelled the anchor. Darren's heart skipped a beat at what he'd just seen, and felt the anchor's reaction to be slight for the ridiculousness that was being observed on screen. No way, said Olivia. He's using the fucking chair as a battery, said Tyrone, starting to once again shriek as they all watched Ace's mana pool empty. His available stat points go from 10 to 11. All before the young man on screen blew their minds by meditating to regain just enough mana to trigger his one and only spell, Absorb. The chat exploded as Ace's empty mana pool that should have taken anywhere from an hour or more to fill recovered completely in a matter of seconds. only for it to empty again as his mana pool was used to give him yet another stat point. Ding, Embracing Evil says, hacks. Ding, Terminator Sleazy says, is that broken because that feels fucking broken. Ding, Pushu says, just deleted my tune. Maybe premature, but fuck it. Gotta start experimenting with this before everyone else figures this out. Ding. Little Billy Dingleberry says, hacker. I said it before and I'll say it again. The devs feed him unused tactics and guidance that we don't get at the bottom of the pyramid people. Anyone else feel like this could get bad quick? Asked Darren. Yo, the boss is fucking back, and he might just be scarier than ever before. I'll put money on it, said Tyrone, finally stopping himself from screaming and cackling uncontrollably. That's a bet I'm not taking even if I had money to lose, said Olivia, nodding as she looked over to Darren, her brother nodding in agreement. Ditto. Yo, how fast do you think he's going to level? Asked Olivia. I don't know. I mean, he needs 1,000 stat points to get to level 2 and 2,000 to get to 3. But what if he doesn't level up? Asked Darren with a question of his own. What do you mean, why wouldn't he? Asked Tyrone. Did you not forget the last bonus of the collector frameworks? Anything that falls within those frameworks no longer are limited by level restrictions. It may be 100 points to get his powers leveled from 0 to 1, but unlike everyone else, he doesn't need to be level 2 to take his powers beyond his own level. He can just keep power leveling them until he can't gain access to any more stat points, explained Darren, causing his sister to gasp and Tyrone to start yelling, the young man standing up to dance, jigging as he spoke. I may start over my damn self, make a new character that goes stealth, just to stab necks and steal some health, said Tyrone, struggling to finish his terribly sung song in a rhyme. Dude, shut up. All this could blow up in his face for all we know. Unless he truly does something that shifts the paradigm from what we all know, this is just a gimmick, said Darren. Though he wanted to believe that his friend was on a new and brilliant path forward, he couldn't help but feel that unlike Alexander's previous play, everything he watched happen was not as well planned out as his once guild leader normally plotted in-game matters to. He was lost, not only because magic wasn't something Alexander had ever used before, but also because the two hadn't talked in nearly a year. Darren felt he needed to give his friend time and space to heal, but looking at the excitement in his friend's eyes and the ever-increasing number of stats being displayed on screen, Darren knew that great change would soon touch his favorite game. I guess I have no choice but to see where this goes.
Let's see.
Speech unmuted. Finder, Google Chrome, Streamlabs, stream button, end stream, live 1 hour, 13 minutes, and group, 1 viewers, group, live 1, end stream, button, end, live 1 hour, 4 pages. Pages, chapter 4, are you not entertained? Pages, window, body, page 1 of 3, footer, group, body, close window, Streamlabs desktop, pages, finder, find chapter 5, the key to victory, pages, cancel, button, opening chapter 5, the key to victory, pages. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space. Now in Chapter 5, the key to victory, pages, window, document, layout area. Format, move, and resize items within the document. You are currently on a layout area.
Poke myself. God damn it. I literally just talked about being used to that yesterday with a friend, which is wild. The odds of me poking myself. Oh my gosh.
Body, page 1 of 3, edit, speech muted.
As his entire development team rushed around the room in a complete and utter panic. He scratched his long and scruffy beard, brushing the end of his ponytail behind himself as he sat upright, shaking his head at the chaos around him. This wasn't the first time Alexander had caused a panic within the offices and labs of Epistem's research and development team. Nor did Edward believe that it would be the last. The only difference this time was that Edward had absolutely no idea what the boy's end objective was. Usually, Alexander spoke with fans, sharing his plans, truly never misleading his audience, using a personified transparency and honesty that worked in his favor whenever he left his fans in disbelief that his absurd plans actually worked. This could be bad if we don't do something, though. What if we give him a quest to break out of his cell? We could give him a chance to get a rather good reward by breaking out rapidly, and if we work quickly, we could create an event that starts with the destruction of the prison he is in as a whole. Maybe cut off his access to the Mana grid, asked one of the new trainees to join the team. Edward nodded, not looking away from the stream up on their main screen in the lab. Good idea, but that may backfire. We can offer the quest and even set restrictions like a time limit, but as for a reward, the in-game AI will determine the difficulty of the quest and what the reward will be, stated Edward, not dismissing the idea entirely. Could a single reward be worse than letting him potentially become as powerful as a fucking raid boss? Said a familiar voice from behind Edward. He looked back at the sound of the swiveling cane that told him that his boss had just entered the lab. The blind man scratched his unkempt dreads, smiling as he strolled into the room, making his way over to where Edward sat. Edward couldn't help but smirk at the old flannel with holes and the stained sweatpants the man wore. For being one of the richest men alive, this motherfucker doesn't give a fuck about his appearance. Hey, boss, what can I do to help you today? Asked Edward, chuckling as many of his new employees began to panic at the sight of Carter Paragon, the founder of Epistem. To many, the man was a god. But to Edward, his boss was nothing but a nerd who loved to tell stories and lucked into one of the best coding teams to ever exist in a time when AI was truly becoming a limitless tool. As well as his investments in nanobot research. I'm just here for the show. You know that kid is one of my favorites. I can't subscribe to his channel, though. People still think we play favorites, said Carter. The short author turned trillionaire easily found a seat next to Edward, sitting in an empty chair that he'd left nearby just for his boss. Edward glanced toward his boss before looking around at the rest of the lab. Holograms displaying not only many streams, but different cameras within the game world at vital locations floated through the air, with the exception of Alexander's stream that sat fixed on the far back wall for the entire development team to watch. Edward nodded in response as he glared at all his staring employees, shooing his staff in an attempt to get them back to work. Speaking to design this game with equality and integrity in mind, let them say what they want. Alexander is just a skilled player. Carter nodded. We both know that the game gives every player an equal opportunity to thrive, but that doesn't change the fact that those with more time and resources will always have more of an opportunity to capitalize. They have more freedom and access to in-game knowledge to play with an edge, and the availability to pods and capsules becomes more and more exclusive the larger our player community becomes, Edward. Yeah, I know. But that is life. Not anything that you, I, or anyone in this room did. We are here to offer the greatest experience in the world. And we do that with ease, boss. Carter nodded again. Don't let me distract you. Help your team out of this jam. I know you like to let them scramble as the sky falls and the world burns down all around them, but I pay you to lead my friend, not be an evil villain, said Carter, as they both laughed, his blind boss turning to face him with two eyes like that of two nearly translucent brown mirrors, as if he could see Edward turn to look at him. Well, you know what I mean, clarified Carter, as Edward was indeed paid to be an in-game villain, as was every other in-game raid boss in endless isekai beside Edward's own avatar. Each and every powerful NPC in-game was truly piloted by paid employees, which gave the game an unrivaled depth of play, making every boss interaction unique. Don't worry about it, boss. The kid over there had a good idea, but I have a bad feeling that the quest is going to end up fucking us in the long run. Alexander is not only smart, he's lucky, and sometimes leaves me feeling as if the fame and attention he brings to the game makes the AI favor him, even if we don't. Agreed, said Carter with an accompanied laugh. So what will it be, boss? Should I start working on a patch? Yelled the same trainee, Edward nodding toward the young man as he struggled to remember his name. The chubby, dark-skinned man held a serious gaze that reminded Edward of himself. His bald trainee far more intelligent and disciplined than his fellow team members. Brian Thomas, I think. He's going to have a bright future if he continues to work on his toes like this. You heard the man. Let's fix this before it gets any worse, people, yelled Brian, as Edward leaned back in his chair once more. Let's hope this doesn't backfire. Darren grew numb to the number of stats displayed on screen. Alexander had already gained enough points to level up, actively choosing not to. This, above all else, surprised Darren and everyone else around him, as certain in-game accomplishments came with achievements that granted players benefits that couldn't be gained any other way. The current record for leveling from 1 to 2 was 11 days. It was widely known that having a leveling achievement came with a boon that granted increased training speeds, rarefied drop rate increases, and even a legacy that couldn't be shared without being lost. He stopped. "What is he doing now?" asked one of his sister's guildmates. "He's leveling his skills or spell," answered Darren, even before Alexander pulled up his character sheet. "How do you?" started Olivia, silenced by Alexander's clicking of his meditation skill. They watched as he spent 600 stat points on the skill, taking it from level 1 to 3. So far, the slowest moving aspect of his plan was the few moments in between the emptying of his mana pool and his meditation skill's regeneration of his mana, pool enough to trigger his absorb spell. A non-issue that had just been remedied with a few clicks. "I like where his head is at, but how is this going to lead to his escape?" asked Tyrone. Darren thought for a moment, looking over the incident boards still being worked on by the guild members in the room, his mind fixating on one of many ideas he'd previously dismissed, until he saw just how rapidly Alexander's growth was becoming. Mana manipulation may be the key to his freedom, read Darren mentally before looking back at the live stream. "Yo, Olivia, could you pull up his imprisonment video and put it in the corner for me?" His sister nodded, and not even a minute later, the video began to play. The large prison cell was shown. Alexander struggled to escape as his captors filled the room, dragging him inside before forcing him to sit in the throne-like chair. 4 guards holding him in place as he kicked and jerked violently to escape his fate. The armored men and women forcing him to stay still, pushing his arms, chest and legs to stay flat against the surface of the stone chair. He yelled and screamed as a mage entered the room, followed by a powerful enchanter and a skilled craftsman. "Don't worry, child. This won't take long, and we will soon leave you to your sentence," said the hooded mage. The caster's voice thrumming with power as he raised both hands into the air, the enchanter and craftsman doing the same at his flanks. Pure white energy filled the room as mana flooded the prison cell. Lines of power began to transform into runes in the air and swirl around the throne. "I will find you all and kill you for this. By my mother's name, you will not live long after my escape from this place," roared Alexander. "Silly half-blood, you will not live long enough to be freed. Your sentence is far longer than your half-blooded mortal coil will last, and none have ever escaped these catacombs, child, whether they be native or traveler. You will die here," said the mage, laughing. The craftsman's hands started to tremble, and the stone of the chair Alexander was being forced to sit in by the 4 guards around him began to warp, the stone of the chair moving like liquid as it wrapped around his limbs and neck. The guards began to quickly unshackle Alexander, as the magical chains that bound him would no longer be necessary after the enchanter's work was done. The metal previously being used to bind him both strong enough to restrict his mighty body and stop him from accessing his spatial inventory. The runes summoned by the enchanter fell from the air above like shooting stars, colliding with the stone chair, the floor, the walls, and even the ceiling above. Alexander's screams were snuffed out as the moving stone of the chair forced his chin upward as the lower half of his skull was swallowed. The stone once more solidifying, Alexander's body now frozen stiff. "I will visit you half-breed. An abomination like you will be amusing to watch suffer. It doesn't seem to matter what we do. Your fragile, low-born minds always seem to unravel as you come to realize the truth of these cells," said the mage as he leaned in, standing over Alexander. "These runes will never fail, as all you and your fellow prisoners' cells sit above a ley line that powers the entire city. I mean, we won't even have to come clean up your corpse after you die and turn to dust. The runes we are leaving in place will even handle that in the end," finished the elf in a whisper as he straightened. Dazzling patterns were forming by the runes all around him. They would sustain his life, keeping him fed, clean, and even healthy until his heart one day stopped beating. Even the image of the kingdom above was runically made to mesmerize Alexander into a perpetual state of calm. His mind once made to spend countless hours gazing at the sight above, until he gained a resiliency to mental magics that Darren noticed Alexander had since then lost from his character sheet. It was what the mage said as he and the rest of the guards and his fellow mages left the room that made Darren's eyes go wide. "Did you hear that? Go back and turn it up," yelled Darren, the room going quiet as the mage's near-whispered words replayed for them all. "The brute has no chance to escape. He doesn't even have the simplest skill in mana manipulation," said the mage, nearly cackling as the group of potentially dead elves disappeared, the heavy prison cell door closing behind them before it too vanished from existence. leaving nothing but flat rune-lined stone walls. Darren smirked, looking between his best friend and sister. His sister cursing as Tyrone began to scream in excitement. "How much you want to bet that Alexander heard that?" asked Darren, as many of those gathered began to pass money back and forward. His sister cursed as she too pulled a stack of hundreds from her pocket and placed them into Tyrone's extended hand. "Motherfucker, he's actually going to get out, isn't he?" "Yes, my beautiful sister, I think he is." "Quest unlocked. Escape the catacombs of the Lost Kingdom. Even before you were imprisoned, escape was nearly impossible. Now, however, due to a series of random circumstances, your freedom may be just within reach. Quest difficulty, SSS quest objective. Escape from your prison cell. Quest reward, customizable relic. Do you accept, yes, no?" Alexander cursed. He'd never received a triple S quest, nor did he have any relics, even with how strong he'd previously been. Quest's difficulties spanned from F to A, then even further from S to SS. Players under level 100 normally were only granted quests in the F rank, which was what Alexander was used to. Brittany had managed to gain a rank D quest to upgrade her custom class at level 50, but Alexander had only made it to level 49, falling one level short of his own custom class upgrade quest. He'd played as a battle shield master, and didn't feel he would ever truly be able to leave his love of tower shields behind, which was why he was tempted to take the quest, even though he felt he would fail. What if I can get a new weapon that was relic grade? Relics were notoriously the highest ranked item known to players, with rumors that even higher ranked items being yet to be found or discovered. NPCs supposedly had access to relics, and were also the root of the rumors that hinted at even more powerful in-game items existing, which made Alexander feel like the quest couldn't hurt him, but also suspected that the timing of the quest was odd. If I leave the prompt there, it won't go away, and if my escape becomes possible, I could just accept it then, Alexander smirked, and continued to collect stat points and upgrade his skills. The process had been difficult at first, but with his increases in skill and ability levels for meditation and stat converter, he was now able to use the stat gaining ability practically every second. "I wonder if I increase mana manipulation and absorb if I can make this go even faster," thought Alexander, glancing at his available stat points. Seeing that he had the 600 points necessary to take mana manipulation to level 3, he took the dive, and immediately noticed a difference. Whoa! His body warmed, and he felt as if he was vibrating with a growing power that emanated outward from his solar plexus. He closed his eyes, focusing on meditation, converting his mana pool into stats, and the constant use of his absorb spell. The cycle became like a mantra that he spoke, mentally repeating the words for each step of the process over and over again. Absorb, mana converter, meditate, absorb, mana converter, meditate, absorb, mana converter, meditate. He paused once again, wondering if he should upgrade absorb along with the rest of the tools in his growing arsenal. He knew that every 5 levels of skills, spells, and abilities came with upgrades, and thought he remembered absorb having an aura option that could potentially automate part of his process. Meditate may also have a way to make the skill run perpetually too, if I remember correctly. I guess there is only one way to find out. Carter Paragon's laughter filled the lab, and Edward sighed. He looked over at his boss, the man literally in tears, slapping his knee as he nearly fell from his chair with ruckus, deep-belly chuckles. "Well, you were right, Edward. You said that would backfire, but by how much you nailed that one on the nose, I don't think anyone could have seen coming." Beside the laughter, the room was silent until Brian spoke. "The timer won't trigger boss if he doesn't accept the quest, and the event we made can't be triggered because the prison cell is considered an instanced zone. He's pretty much in his own little world. I can't drop the event in the area without players in range. The code sees it as nothing but wasted processing power. I've tried it like 5 times, and the AI flags it and puts a hiatus on the whole bloody thing." Edward glanced over to see an aerial view of the kingdom that Alexander was trapped in on Brian's station screen. A giant red circle with the message, "No available players," in all caps, flashed just over the palace that sat above the catacombs that lay beneath the surface on the young man's screen. "God damn it, we can't even rescind the fucking quest either now that we put it in the AI's hands," mumbled Edward underneath his breath. His boss's laughter echoing throughout the space as the man rose to his feet and slowly made his way out of the room, swiveling his cane from side to side as he walked. "Make sure that our preparations are complete soon, Edward. The next phase is going to change everything, and we don't have any room for mistakes to be made," said Carter, as the lab door opened to allow his exit, Edward looking at the man's back as he left. Yes, sir.
Speech unmuted. Finder. Pages. Close window. Finder. Chapter 6 break the chain dot. Pages. Cancel button. Opening chapter 6 break the chain dot. Pages. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control, Option, Space. Now in Chapter 6 break the chain dot. Pages,
Go.
window, document,
6, guys.
layout area. Format, body, page 1, copy. Actions available.
Chapter
Format
6,
text quickly by
break the chain.
voiceover jumping to the
The more that
formatter.
Alexander leveled
You are
the
currently
tools
on
he
a
had
text
available to
area
him,
inside of a
the more he felt
page.
himself
To add
grow.
comment, hide headers and footers, jump to page format, and bookmark, press Control, Option, Command, Space first to bring up the action menu. Speech muted.
Chapter 6. Break the chain. The more that Alexander leveled the tools he had available to him, the more he felt himself grow powerful in a way he'd never felt in-game before. Originally, he'd assumed that the feeling originated from his new connection to mana, only for his mind to drift back toward both how he was obtaining the powers he gained access to since logging back in, and how he'd been forced to use them creatively, rather than being directed by in-game tutorials given by NPCs or situational quest rewards. Alexander was training himself, learning to wield his character in a completely new way, playing his character in an experimental fashion that made the game feel even more real than it had before. He'd struggled to separate the virtual world from reality while playing previously, but now he felt an even deeper link to the world of Endless, as if his mind, body, and soul had been completely transported to a new world. A world he now found himself living and breathing within. It's time to get out of here, Alexander. He checked his available stat points and made sure he had enough points to level all the pieces of his toolkit to level 5, hoping that upgrading his powers would give him the necessary capabilities to escape. Let's start with meditation. Notification. Meditation upgrade unlocked. Choose from the following list of available upgrades. Supreme Regeneration. While meditating, your regeneration speed is doubled. Supreme Focus. While meditating, all skills, spells, and abilities cost half their normal resource cost. Deep Breathing. While focused on your breathing, the effects of meditation will stay active, even while performing secondary actions or while in combat. That is easy enough, definitely taking deep breathing. This should make everything easier. Alexander made his selection and felt his body take over. With every deep breath he took, more energy thrummed throughout his body, and the meditation icon that normally took his full concentration to stay active in the corner of his vision continued to float in his periphery without a single additional thought needed. That's more like it. Now we are getting somewhere. Let's do Mana Converter next. Notification. Stat Converter upgrade unlocked. Choose from the list of following available upgrades. Conversion Overload. Gain a stat point for each quarter of your mana pool used during the conversion process. Minor Heal. Sacrifice your entire mana pool to heal for 10% of your life total. Inversion. Sacrifice gathered stat points to refill your mana pool. 1 stat point per 100% mana pool refill. Holy fuck, Alexander didn't know what to choose. His choices for this were absolutely incredible, and Alexander wondered if anyone else knew exactly how powerful the upgrades for this ability were. I don't know any non-faith or spirit classes that have heals before level 10. Nor do I know of any classes that can fill their entire mana pool for a single fucking stat point. Though Alexander had found an easy way to gain stat points, it wasn't difficult to gain them normally. Killing monsters, fellow players, or completing quests of the same level as a player all gave a single stat point. Kill 100 monsters, gain 100 stat points. Kill 100 fellow players in a battleground or player versus player zone, gain 100 stat points. Complete 100 minor quests, same result. This fact alone made the inversion upgrade incredible. Yet Alexander struggled not to pick Minor Heal and move on. Fuck man, even Conversion Overload could increase the rate I acquired stat points by 4 times my current speed. But is that enough to choose it? Alexander had much to consider before he made his choice, as he had to remember his current situation wasn't going to be permanent. Though he had access to a considerable amount of mana now, didn't mean that he always would. What choice will make it so that I have the highest chances to survive in any situation? Alexander sighed, choosing Minor Heal, hoping that at higher upgrade levels that he would still be able to access the choices he'd previously been given. Okay, what's next? Mana Manipulation. Or Absorb. It wasn't until he asked himself the question that another issue filled his mind, and Alexander groaned. Even if I can disrupt the mana of the runes within the room, I'm still going to be wrapped in Mother. Fucking Stone. What the fuck is he doing now? Asked Olivia, honestly tired of the amount of surprises occurring within the live stream her and her brother's friends all watched. I don't know. It doesn't show us what players are doing when they use a private browser. But it honestly couldn't be anything more than a simple Google search. It's not like any League information websites can be accessed in-game, answered Darren. What do you think he is researching at a time like this? Asked Tyrone. Darren simply shrugged, glancing at the comments to see what the viewers believed him to be doing. Ding. Botanical Boy says, Google search, midstream, never seen him do that before. Ding. Amazon Liquor says, yo, catch me the fuck up. The web going crazy right now, and I couldn't get in until the petition got cleared. Ding. I'm sorry it was me, says, White Boy Online back on his bullshit breaking the internet again. You know how Cerberus get down on Endless. Ding. Synonymous Sinner says, pretty sure he is of Asian descent. Maybe his mom was mixed, I think. Can't remember. But whoa, that petition cleared already. What the fuck happened? Oh shit, you know Epistem happy. They just got 100 mil new player accounts made in the last hour. God damn. How many people you think are new? Or just old players making new accounts? Asked Olivia, Darren looking over at his sister to see that she too was reading comments. Who knows? It could honestly be a lot of players that stopped playing when Ace said he was retiring. You know how loyal his fan base was, said Tyrone. Darren nodded in agreement. Looks like he's done doing whatever he was on the web now, though, said Darren, watching as Alexander returned to gathering stat points. Once at 1,000 for what felt like the dozenth time in a few hours, Darren once again assumed Alexander was going to level his character, only to be yet again surprised. Notification. Mana manipulation upgrade unlocked. Choose from the list of following available upgrades. External control. Gain the ability to control the mana outside of your body within a certain range. Range increases with each level increase to this ability. Internal control. Gain the ability to create internal mana systems that will allow for stronger mana regeneration. Spell infusion. Gain the ability to use external and internal mana to empower spells further beyond their normal limits. Motherfucker, for that skill alone, I'm going to have to remake my character, yelled one of Olivia's friends from the back of the room, and Darren felt he knew what upgrade she was talking about. I guarantee you half the powerful casters in the game that figure out that spell infusion is a thing are going to remake their characters, said Olivia softly, making Darren wonder for the first time if she too was thinking what it would be like to start fresh.
That kid could be one
Against
VN
all
workout.
odds, however, Alexander chose what none there thought he would.
Yeah, this is the last episode.
What the fuck? He chose external control. Why? Asked Tyrone, his face going blank as he grew confused. I would say he doesn't care about power, maybe, but I bet it instead has something to do with his escaping this prison cell, said Darren. Many of the guild members behind him murmuring in agreement as Darren once again looked to the comments for potential answers. Ding! Recon Fisted says, this dude has got to be an idiot, right? I ain't even a bloody caster and I would have went for spell infusion. Ding! Bellowing Miracle Worker says, I don't know how much longer I can watch this shit show, man. Ding! The Silent Tickler says, speak for yourself. Learned more watching this dude in a locked room over the past few hours than I have combing the internet in the last year. Ding! Freckled Spectacles says, I hope all you dirty bitches leave. More game-breaking knowledge for the real ones. Why do I even look at those fucking people? They're all crazy, thought Darren, feeling like he'd looked at the comments in vain. Once again tricked momentarily believing that people could be sensible. Here he goes again, said Olivia, drawing his attention away from the outlandish comments he'd just read. Alexander had once again gathered 1,000 points, even more quickly than he had prior. Why do I feel like external control increased his mana regeneration even further? Notification. Absorb spell upgrade unlocked. Choose from the following list of available upgrades. Indiscriminate drain. Gain the ability to drain properties from materials, as well as various energy types previously unattainable. Absorption aura. Create a draining field around yourself that drains your current focused energy type. Range of field and power of drain increased with spell level. Stat drain. Drain the stats of your defeated enemies. Welp, it's decided, guys, said Darren, walking away from those gathered in his room. The young man stopping at his capsule on the far side of the room. Looks like I'm joining the bandwagon. It's time to start a new character, said Darren, clicking the purchase button on his phone for a new account he'd almost considered not buying until he saw the last set of upgrades Alexander had just received. Many of his own guild members had also darted out of the room, and Darren chuckled as he looked around to see Olivia nowhere to be seen. Yo, D, you still got an extra capsule in your entertainment room, yelled Tyrone as Darren got into his capsule. Yeah, like 100, my guy. Where do you think everyone else is going? Said Darren with a chuckle. Tyrone's eyes went wide as he stood in the doorway to Darren's bedroom, cursing as he took off down the hallway. Motherfuckers! Alexander sat frozen, looking at the absorb upgrade options. It wasn't until he actually saw the notification for the upgrade pop into his vision that Alexander remembered that absorb had never been upgraded, as far as the endless isekai community knew, and with a simple series of stat points, Alexander had just done so with ease. This honestly makes me wonder, spells for casters, skills for stealth classes, and abilities for might classes. What if each primary stat category is supposed to take the collector framework for what they used the most in-game? Alexander was beginning to feel as if he was truly finding a way to bridge the potential gap between players and NPCs. The natives of Endless were always stronger than players, which Alexander believed was due to the game's incredible difficulty level. But what if that isn't it? What if NPCs have access to more upgrades and grow stronger because we lack what they use instinctually? Alexander had never gotten a secondary upgrade, or any skill, spell, or ability to level 10, as players had come to feel levels far outweighed the benefits of simple upgrades. The higher one leveled, the more tools a player gained access to. This practically forced players to gain more options through levels alone, often skipping out on leveling skills, spells, and abilities to expand their toolkits, giving them more options to defend themselves against their much stronger opponents, the natives and monsters throughout the world. Which made him wonder if Alexander and the rest of the travelers in Endless had always been playing wrong. What if our skills, spells, and abilities are supposed to be way stronger at lower levels? Wouldn't that make leveling easier, fights easier, maybe even crafting too? Alexander was sure that players had leveled abilities beyond level 5, but he himself hadn't. He'd never had the use to, leaving him to wonder at how significant upgrades could become. Would he be able to get all the effects listed within the absorb upgrade list if he got the spell to level 15, or would even stronger upgrades be offered? He found himself extremely excited to find out. Now, however, the choices in front of him were far more difficult than he believed they would be. What should I do here? He felt indiscriminate drain was essential to his escape, but his eyes kept drifting toward the stat drain upgrade. He cursed mentally as he made his choice, hoping that the other upgrade options would be available later. Please, God, please let this work. Alexander began to focus. He was going to have to manage the use of multiple of his new tools for his escape attempt to work. From what he'd researched earlier, if he managed to draw out the liquid from the stone he was encased in, the material could become brittle and weak, making him potentially able to break the chair he sat within. Before he could manage that, though, he needed to cut the flow of mana to the runes that had been burned into the surface of the stone. He didn't know much of runes, but the little he did understand through his previous play told him that many of the runes around him were used to stop powerful magics from being used by him. Absorb worked merely because it was an incredibly weak spell, and was only being used by him to draw on the abundance of mana in the air around him. If he was directly trying to absorb the power from the runes directly, however, Alexander had a feeling that he would pay for his attempts in an absolute and agonizing pain. Eyes closed and breathing deeply, Alexander focused, trying to form a bubble of mana around himself. A bubble of mana to stop the flow of mana currently being drawn in toward the runes inscribed into the stone. Mentally, he made his want for the mana around him to stop moving. He'd been able to pull mana toward his body even before his external control upgrade for mana manipulation through the natural hunger of his mana pool's subtle inward draw through his pores, which made him believe that now that the skill was upgraded, that simply stopping the mana from moving toward him should be completely possible. 10 minutes went by, 20 minutes, 30, an hour. Nothing was happening, no matter how hard Alexander focused, until a random thought struck him. Maybe I should start smaller. He opened his eyes and tried to sense the flow of mana around himself, almost wishing he'd taken the internal control upgrade, wondering if it would allow him to fill his eyes with mana, giving him a visual ability to see mana. He'd seen it done in countless stories, but dismissed the thought for now, seeing if he could manage to stop a small amount of the mana he felt flowing all around himself. Again, nothing happened at first. He narrowed his gaze to the space directly in front of his eyes, urging the mana he felt directly in front of his face to be still. He almost gave up until he saw a change in his environment that filled him with hope. Mana, golden in color, began to condense just beyond his nose. The mana swirled there, moving violently like a drop of water that held a storm within its center. Fuck yes! Alexander hadn't known he was holding his breath until he took in a lungful of air, continuing to focus as hard as he could. It's obviously mental, Ace. Imagine what you need the mana to do. And focus. You have all the time in the world. Hours passed by, and the once small drop of mana grew larger and larger. A series of notifications popped into Alexander's vision, but he ignored them as he concentrated. He'd managed to grow the ball of mana to the size of a melon, and had no plans of stopping until he could completely encase himself in a shield of the chaotic substance. Finally, after nearly half a day, Alexander looked at a bubble of mana significantly larger than the chair he sat in and smiled. He was honestly afraid to stop his mental focus toward the constructed mana shell, unaware of the changes to his character sheet. If he would have looked at his abilities list, he would have noticed not only that he had leveled up his mana manipulation, but also had learned a new spell and skill. Okay, now to move this mana field around myself. The task proved to be simple, merely taking a thought, and Alexander found himself wrapped in a globe of condensed mana. The perimeter of the bubble sliding over the surface of his skin and around the throne-like chair with ease. Really thought that the runes would stop me from doing that, thought Alexander to himself, until he realized he had yet to directly affect the runes in any way. As of now, the bubble is nothing more than mana forced not to move, so maybe the runes don't see the shell as a disruptive force. Mana flowed throughout the interior of the bubble he'd made, and Alexander knew his work wasn't done. More time passed, and Alexander forced all external mana within the room to stop flowing into the bubble around him. Alexander was shocked as the lit runes across the stone chair dimmed before completely disintegrating. The magic of the runes no longer powering the effects that would stop Alexander from using more powerful spells. He roared in excitement, his victorious scream still muffled by the stone wrapped around his mouth. Stone that he had plans to get rid of immediately. Alistair stood in her office watching Alexander play. She couldn't believe her eyes. The young man had regained a viewership of just under 500 million viewers in less than a day. All while trapped in a fucking prison, kid. Are you fucking kidding me? Alistair's gaze dipped to the comments. She was so fond of people's wild thoughts being shared without a care in the world, honestly in love with how mad her client was driving the players of Endless across the world. Let's hope he keeps me as his agent, mumbled Alistair as she began to read. Stab the sun, did this bitch-ass kid just create a new spell? We can create fucking spells. Did I miss a fucking set of patch notes or something? Holy guacamole, yeah. I guess it's a stronger version of Mana Shield, but I don't know that anyone who doesn't do what he did to learn it will be able to use it, my guy. Lava Sipper. This guy is fucking unreal. I'm starting to believe people when they say the devs give him hints and tips on how to play better. Baby slap kids, don't. The devs can't feed anyone info. My brother is on a dev team, and he's watched lead coders get fired for sharing shit as small as a player's in-game location. No kids. Ace is just that good. Don't know what has made him start to play differently, but I bet he's been thinking about his return for far longer than he's led us all to believe. Alistair glanced at her desk phone. It hadn't stopped ringing all day, and she had no plans of answering it until Alexander managed to... Alistair's eyes went wide as the stone around Alexander's hands began to crumble and turn into dust, followed by the stone around his legs, and then his neck and face. He stood, wiping bits of sand from his hands and face, looking around his prison cell and smiling. One in her building was watching while Alexander worked, none knowing what he would do next. Well, that was fun, said Alexander, before his body began to slowly disappear as he logged off the game, his avatar vanishing in a burst of light. Susan, yelled Alistair, calling for her assistant. Yes, ma'am, yelled the woman through the wall. Get that boy on the phone for me right the fuck now. Yes, ma'am.
Yep. And that is just the start, guys. But I gotta work out with my fiance. If you guys have time, check out the character codex video from our partner channel, EpistemicLibrary, that gives you the background information for Ace. If you're interested at all, it's a great video, great little production that we put together. Kind of a demo for the testing that we're going to be doing for building our anime with Passive Kingdom, another one of my partnered channels. Me and my homeboy D-Cell Crazy are building that anime up slowly, so we're doing some research on how we can get it done the best with limited tools. So we only want high quality, so it's gonna take some time. But yeah, no, check out that video. It was made by me and my fiance either last year or the year before. A lot of good, I think it was last year actually, but a lot of good content on that channel if you're interested in checking out more of the characters. We also got Nimbus from Mythical Heretic on there, and hopefully when my fiance moves down here to Evansville, we're gonna start making some more character codex videos for EpistemicLibrary and posting those again. But yeah, I think I only excuse me, I think I only had 12 episodes or something like that written for this one, so it shouldn't take me long to catch up and start writing for this one on Saturdays. And then the same thing with Drake. I think I had about 30 episodes for her, so we'll go through hers after we catch up with this, and that way on Saturdays I can pretty much just like go live with anything that I'm interested in. May it be like the Old Men Talent story that I haven't showed with you guys yet. I think people are gonna like that one. Or Ending Endless, or me going back to 4.5, writing 4.5 for Endless Isekai for Royal Road, because I still gotta write volumes 4.5, 5.5, I think 6.5, 7.5 has already been written, and then I gotta write 8 for Royal Road. Those are the Royal Road ones left that I got to do for Royal Road. But anything after that is just going to be only on Patreon. I mean, especially for like Saturdays and Sundays, like I said. Now that I got a few of these Death Wish episodes up too, I'm going to start to only do those on Sundays, like I said. And then maybe throw in like a variety of different stories just randomly if I ever do bonus streams throughout the week. Yeah. Check out the writing talent, or sorry, writing challenge video. You can tell I'm getting tired. I start to make more and more mistakes. Tomorrow for Life of Symphony Omen, aka Loso, A Rumor of Angels. We should be writing for that one tomorrow, which is really exciting. And then, yeah, I gotta go over some stuff right now actually not right now, but after I'm done with my workout, so I can catch up with my editor this week. So, like I said, more of Ending Endless will get constructed, and hopefully we'll get that out to you in like the next 6 months. I'm hoping that me and my editor can start to do pre-orders for it like maybe 3 months from now, maybe 3 or 4 months from now. So if not, I'm gonna let that project breathe, let it come to life in its own time, and not go crazy. Just taking my time with that one. But yeah, no, again, thank you for buying the books from my Amazon library, guys. Thank you for the Patreon subscriptions. That honestly means the world to me. And I appreciate you so much for coming back and listening to my stories with me every day and getting to write with me. If you guys have any questions, of course, comment, send me a private message. Of course, I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And yeah, I think that's it. Oh, leave the best comment this week, and of course get a free digital copy of one of my books on me. And yeah, may the mana be with you, my fellow cultivators. And seriously, I hope you guys are being good to
Speech
yourselves.
unmuted. Chapter 5, Chapter 6, pages. Streamlabs.
I hope you guys are writing every day. If you aren't, you should go check out my newest short on my channel. It's my writing challenge to all of my beloved cultivating writers. Hopefully you guys are, like I said, writing every day, finding something inspirational, in your day-to-day moments, being open and sympathetic to those around you, and being open to new things and trying new things in your lives, especially foods. Because, you know, if you're like me, you're a fat kid at heart. Yeah. So, again, please be good to yourselves. And until
End
we
stream.
speak
Live 1
again-
hour, 56 minutes.
Okay.
And group. 1 viewers. Group.
Yeah,
Live 1.
yeah,
End
thanks.
stream. Live 1 hour. End stream. Button.
All right. Until we speak again, my fellow tool. Yeah, I need to go to sleep.